Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
So would you say the meaning of meaning are facts?
No.
I got you. There we go. Now we got you. Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Dr. Dids. Dr. Dids, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello. Greetings and salutations, as I like to say. Okay, so all right, I'm really honored to be here and thank you for asking me. My name is Margaret Weldon, but everybody calls me Diddy, and a lot of my friends call me Dr. Dids. So who am I and what do I do? All right, so I used to work in the theatre. I've worked in TV and film. I used to do a bit of acting. I have now got really heavily into AI, and I've been producing and writing short films, and I've won a couple of awards for my short films. And I've got a feature script, which I'm really trying to get people interested in and to fund because it's an amazing story, and it's already won 4 awards on the international circuit. So it's an amazing story. I'm bigging myself up here. So yeah, I started like modeling when I was a kid, and then I worked in the theatre from the age of 15, and I did sound and lighting and then show management and production management. And I used to run I show managed at a theme park called the American Adventure, which was phenomenal, trick riders and stuff. What am I? I'm a Christian. I volunteer at 1,000-year-old Minster in Southwell, and I do their vision mixing, which is basically just live streaming. It sounds great, vision mixing, but it's just mixing some cameras so they've got a nice live stream. But yeah, it's a 1,000-year-old building, so we've got a lot of history. And in the UK, I grew up and I was surrounded by like humor and comedy, and I worked in the theatre, and I absolutely love pantomime. So I not sure if the American audience are overly familiar with pantomime, but um, so I'm coming from a British sense of humor, which is usually quite dry and quite sarcastic, but really kind of funny. And I was in a film called a very surreal British comedy called Bunny and the Bull, which was a film. So yeah, and if you want to know anything more about me, you can go and find my website, which I just did yesterday. I revamped it. It's diddywelder.co.uk, and I am the original Diddy because Puff Daddy was actually Puff Daddy when I was Diddy. So I might actually think about suing the gangster's ass for nicking my name. That's a joke, by the way. That is a British joke, yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that's me. Hello, and really nice to meet you.
As well, that's the story, right? So you're the original Diddy. Everyone else is
I am
just a
the
fake.
original OG. Yeah, man.
Absolutely. They're
Definitely.
just doing some kind of bad AI copy, right? So you ready to get into it? You ready to get into it, Dr. Diddy?
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this as well. I'm gonna.
All
I
right.
think I might educate you on British comedy. I think that's
I
literally my role here.
that sounds good. Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So Dr. Diddy, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Uh, yeah, because I mean, you've always got that comedic kid at school, haven't you? That kind of then goes and pursues a career out of the fact that they are the Joker. I mean, British humor has always danced between that mask of like truth and and like for example. I'll go straight into this because my nickname is actually really relevant to a British comedian, and his name was Ken Dodd, and he was from Liverpool, and he came from a place called Knotty Ash. Or at least he had what was called the Diddy men, okay, and they used to go down the Jambutti mines, and they used to mine for Jambuttis. So he used to have a tickling stick as well, yeah. So he, like, if you went to see him perform, you would probably expect to go and see an hour show, an hour and a half show, but 4 hours later, you would still be in the theatre and you would be aching from the laughter. So he was just a natural born comedian, comic. He was just, and he didn't try to be comical. He just was comical. So it's an interesting question because I think some people are just born naturally to have that sense of humor that appeals to a wider audience. So yeah.
Well, I would agree with that. So to me, that makes perfect sense. So you ready for the first question?
Oh, go on then. Yeah, 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 yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
about the role of persona in comedy. So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
Oh, again. I mean, like, I'm going to relate to English comedians all the time. You might not have heard any of them, but I used to love a guy called Jim Davidson, and he was literally just himself. But the way he told stories, it was like ended up in such ridiculous situations that you wouldn't believe they were true, but they were. But he was just being himself and just changing these stories. Whereas some people, they do take on, um, like say this mask, they put this mask on and they become somebody completely different. But I think the best comedians are those that purely are themselves. We used to have a guy called Roy Chubby Brown as well, which you may not have heard of. He was based in Blackpool, and he was an over the top, larger than life guy. But people just loved that. But he used to swear all the time. Yeah. And that was him literally being himself. And we had like Kenny Everett. Now, Kenny Everett was back in the 70s, early 80s, and he would dress as characters. So that was completely different. He wasn't being himself, he was putting himself in a character mask, and there was multiple different character masks, and I think that's the difference. When you're yourself as a comedian, you are yourself, but if you put a mask on, you can be 100 different characters, and you can channel different parts of yourself through those characters. Each and every one of them works in a different way, but yeah, like if you ever go onto YouTube and try and find some Kenny Everett sketches, he will be a woman one day, he will be like a man the next day, an astronaut. You know what I mean? He's always something other than what he is. And I think like we have as well, there was a really famous comedian called like Lily Savage. So that was a guy, drag queen. Uh and that obviously, as himself, he's really quite a serious person. But when he was Lily Savage, he was phenomenal, phenomenal. And that was his onstage persona. So it's an interesting question. I mean, what do you feel more comfortable with when you're delivering comedy yourself? Am I allowed to ask you questions?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I do stand up, and it's always an interesting. Here in Los Angeles, it's a lot of showcase, meaning, a lot of not always your own crowd. So
Mm,
yeah, so you definitely have to be in a wider audience, very kind of Hollywood-ish, and it's about really. There's a political bent to it, so you gotta kind of thread that line if you want to. If you want to make political jokes, you can, but people don't really laugh, at least here. And so, I personally try and take on the role of different characters, mainly things that are otherworldly, right? Very much into the spiritual realm. So
nice.
that's my style. So, ready for the next question?
Yeah, go on then.
Absolutely. So it's about punching up versus punching down. So where do comics versus comedians stand on this? So let me put this in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the Beady, beady, first beady, beady. comedian by killing the court jester?
Oh, no, that's an interesting. Okay. So did the prince do what?
That's the question. Did he? Did he become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Did the prince become that? That's quite surreal, though, isn't it? Really, as well, you know. Um, yeah, I mean, it's like that's like flirting with the line, isn't it? You know, going over the line a little bit.
Just a little.
Maybe he did. Maybe he did, you know, in a very surreal kind of flirty kind of line way. I don't know how I'm going to relate to. Have you ever heard of Only Fools and Horses? Like it was so popular in the Britain. We used to.
When
Okay,
was
so
this? This is a little bit ago.
yeah, I mean, you got like a character called Del Boy, and he used to drive around in a Robin Reliant, which we used to call Plastic Pig. So it was like literally a three-wheeler car, and it was bright yellow. And like he always poked fun at the working class. You're saying about you're not allowed to do like political jokes. Like literally, I think most of our best comics are, you know, poking fun at the political parties. But it was always like they always poke fun at the working class and like the struggles, but it was there was a lot of warmth to it. I don't think your medieval knight killing the court jester probably had a lot of warmth to it. It was probably a cold hard gesture. Um, yeah, so yeah, I mean we there's so much. It's like Steptoe and Son. It was a brilliant thing back in the 50s, black and white, and like one of the main characters, Steptoe, he was just you'd think he was right nasty, but like really he was quite a funny old man with just, you know, quirky ways about him, and he was just full of heart. Um, so yeah, like yeah, so is that part of the punching up and punching down question? Because the I think like really punching up is powerful. Yeah.
Hmm.
It shows a
Yeah.
powerful side, and I think that's a really good thing. Like I used to, I don't like again, like, forgive me because I'm gonna go back quite a way, but I used to love Bill Hicks as an American comedian. I thought he was phenomenal. And he always punched up, and so did Richard Pryor and Robin Williams, always punching up, and that's truth, yeah. That's just being honest and truthful. And I think personally, like punching down is just laziness. It really is. There's not. I don't think there's an art to that at all. It's just being really lazy because being a genuine comic and making people laugh, there's a real art form to that. You know. I mean, you
So
can
would
be.
you call Andy Warhol an artist or at least an original creator?
Andy Warhol, well, he was definitely an artist. I think maybe I don't know. I'm not. He was a good artist. He was good at bending truths and showing things for an alternative side of what you believe them to be. He wasn't the best artist in the world, but he certainly started a new movement.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Exactly. So, well, let's transition. So, cultural translation of comedy. So, how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
okay, the only person. Okay, so yeah, okay, so. Lots of British jokes bomb in many places over the world. And this is goes into a question that you've got for me later as well. But like and I think like you said, you know, there's certain places you can't do political jokes, but maybe you come over here and you do political jokes, people will probably love you. Do you know what I mean? Um, however, universal comedy, the only person I know, or the only people that I know who have really achieved universal comedy are more like silent comics. So, you know, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, Mr. Bean, you know, he's universal. Like Mr. Bean, you could say anywhere you go in the world, and they've heard of Mr. Bean and they all love him and think he's hilarious. And I think a lot of the power in that is because it's action and not words. And with action, you can't really misinterpret an action, but with words, you can misinterpret words.
Okay. I can go with that. So when I'm talking about, you know, the kind of it's a woke culture we have here, but it's also not. It's a very strange thing. So it depends on how you want to tell jokes. A lot of people that are on this woke world don't go to comedy shows, right? So they
No.
may end up there, but it's a strange in between. So would you say that truth is the meaning of facts?
Oh gosh, that's truth, the meaning of facts. Okay.
Mm.
one person's truth is not another person's truth. That's a completely individual
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
To you know, everybody has their own truth, but the facts are facts. You can't
So
change the
what
fact.
got it? So what about this third element, the meaning? So is the truth the meaning of facts?
Yeah, because the meaning again of truth is different to every single person. My truth and the meaning of my truth isn't the same as the meaning of your truth. But the facts are the facts, and you can't change the facts. For example, I was like mentioned like Kenny Everett or Benny Hill or like Mr. Bean. Okay, Mr. Bean's funny. You can't, that's a fact. It's also my truth, but I think that's probably your truth as well. So that's where it becomes universal, like a song, like
So
music.
so would you say the meaning of meaning are facts?
No.
I got you. There we go. Now we got you.
No, no.
There it
The
is.
meaning,
There it is.
that's a good quite deep, really, though, isn't it? I mean, we're
Right?
going on right philosophical, like metaphysical kind of road there. The meaning of meaning. What is the meaning of meaning? That's a deep
It only
question.
works when it's only works in the context of is truth the meaning of facts. Then we can get to is the meaning of meaning facts, right? So, all right. So crowd work versus crafted work. So if comics riff like influencers in the comments section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
You mean like hecklers?
Yeah, there's hecklers as well,
Where is the sweet spot? It's interesting because you're talking about comments. I mean, with comments, you just if you find it personal, you can just ignore it. It is what it is.
right?
Um, you know, um, heck, like there's a difference, isn't there, between being on, say, a podcast and reading comments later than actually being in a live audience and getting heckled right at that point that you're being heckled. Um, I think both matter. Like, comedy better live and improvised, or something tightly scripted, like TV comedy. You know, very different, but they both matter. So I used to love a guy called Jack D. And Jack D was a very kind of depressed and dry wit humor. Um, but like then you've got Lee Evans, who was more physical. He kind of that school from the Charlie Chaplin and the Harold Lloyd. I used to love Harold Lloyd. But that's when precision meets artistry, and that's very different. Yeah. So we've got a guy called John Bishop who's Liverpudlian, and he's really good. He riffs really well with crowds. So and then you've got somebody like Uncle Roger. Now, I don't know if you've heard of Uncle Roger, but he's like, yeah, he's phenomenal, and he really thrives online. So there's a big, like, John Bishop doesn't do so well online, but he does great with live audiences. When you're a comedian and you go to a stadium, you've got 10,000 people who have paid to see you in that stadium. I mean that just goes to show the power of for your persona, how good you are at comedy, and the fact that people don't people are going to pay money because they want to see you, whereas sometimes if it's online they might just think, oh, this video's popped up in my feed, let's have a look, it looks quite interesting. Massive difference, massive difference. But you've got a wider reach with online. So again, it's crowd work versus crafted work. I think again this goes for genuinely just natural born comedic people who just come over as, if you say something like Jack D, his wit was so dry in the sense that you ask him a question, he just gives you a dry answer, but the audience find it funny. Yeah, because it's a kind of sarcasm tone to it, and that doesn't actually fit or fly with a lot of people. Too much crowd work, you can lose your structure, and too scripted, you lose the connection. So there is a fine line between that, but both matter. And I think the best comedians kind of balance both. And that's where I say it's an art. It's not just like, it is a real fine art, like musicians improvising over a rhythm, like
Mhm.
comics do the same thing, comedians do the same thing. I've seen it backstage in Panto, like, and on film sets, timing is everything. Get that
I
punchline
agree.
in. Timing is everything, you know?
I agree with that. Okay, very important question. Advertising and self promotion. Who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
Oh gosh. Okay, I worked with a comedy magician. I've worked with a couple of comedy magicians when I was working on a cruise ship. Um, that's interesting. So let's go back to Ken Dodd. The reason I'm going to go back to Ken Dodd is because, like, my name's Diddy. Okay, so I picked my nickname up in the theatre because I'm small. But the reason being is because Ken Dodd was such a massive person and massive influence in the theatre at the time, and so what he had was he had little kids and they were all dressed up in these suits with these big bowler hats on, and they were called the Diddy men. Okay, and that's where it comes from, being small, Diddy. And my mum's grandma was from Notty Ash. So if Ken Dodd, like, Ken Dodd wasn't on TikTok, yeah. So this is before social media, okay. So in that respect, you had to be your brand had to be advertised. You were that brand, you still are, like, even now, you know, but you had to get a marketing company, you had to have a manager and a marketing company and a branding agent and everything like that to do the advertising for you, you know, and paper advertising, TV advertising, etc. Now, with like self-promotion, everybody thinks they're a comic in the sense of like, you know, the YouTubers and stuff when they do their pranks and things, and you know, and not everybody, like, not all of those pranks are really comical. So that's interesting. But you've got to say you've got this wider audience, so your self-promotion relies really heavily on an online persona. Um, so, you know, I mean, like, I think self-promotion is survival. I think you have to do it. It's not something, you know, we're not in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s anymore, you know, where there's only kind of four channels on the TV. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, and I think it's harder work for people to do self-promotion, especially comedy, they say, because that's a big, wide audience that you're reaching out to, and some of those
Right.
comments in the comment box must be quite demeaning, to be fair. Yeah, but people
All
just
right.
the comedy's just gone over their head. It's like
Yeah.
5,000 miles an hour. I don't know what you mean, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So censorship and offense. So who survives better in a cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
Oh gosh. Okay. Now this is interesting. Okay. All right. So we're talking about censorship, and I'm in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So this is quite a subject, and I might not answer it the way that you want me to answer it.
And
But in
whatever
the
you want to
UK,
say is
okay,
how it
so
is.
well, that's what I was going to say. You see, in the UK, it's gone rather extreme with
Mm-hmm.
censorship on freedom of speech, and people have been arrested for posting jokes online. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. Like, so comics, I think, kind of try and avoid offense, but comedians like to court it in the and make a point. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like Bill Hicks did that all the time. Yeah. And Jack Wilkes, I work with Jack Wilkes as well. I love Jack Wilkes. He's such a beautiful person. I haven't seen him for like 20 years. He was amazing. He was a friend of Bill Hicks. And Ricky Gervais. I think everybody knows who Ricky Gervais is, who's The
Mm-hmm.
Office. I mean, that speak was it the Oscars? That speech you did at the Oscars, cut in, yeah, really cut in, funny, really funny, and he does it a lot. Um, but the world now sort of risks losing laughter, or at least in the UK with multi, I can't say multiculturalism. policing of humor is gone mad and like shockingly to an extreme. And yet it's like a real part of the conversation. So if you've ever heard of a like very recently, and this is really recent, so there's a TV program called Father Ted, which is about an Irish Catholic priest. Okay. And there were a couple of main characters, and so the guy, one of the co-writers was called Graham Lynham, and he was arrested recently, a couple of days ago, well, last week I think it was, and he was arrested by five armed police at an airport when he was coming back from the States for a joke that he posted online. Okay. Now, if, as I say, if people aren't aware of who he is, he literally helped co-write the TV sitcom Father Ted. And if you don't know who Father Ted is, go and Google it on like YouTube and go and watch it. It's phenomenal, especially like there's a Christmas edition one. So funny. But this is like culturally Irish humor, and specifically Irish Catholic humor living in the sticks in Ireland, right? But obviously the translation of that, people are mudslinging at him because they don't understand his jokes, and a particular community have done this. And so, he's accused the police of actually basically working for trans activists because, you know, all he did was write literally put a comedic post on Twitter, and one person has complained about him, saying that he caused offense, and he's had five armed police arrest him at an airport. So, he's currently under criminal charges for damage and harassment of teenagers. Like
Hmm.
it's a joke. So this is a really interesting question. It's rather political in that sense, because maybe I have to watch what I say. People might complain about me and want me arrested because I'm in the UK. So, and I think the massive difference is that being in, at least in the US, you do have freedom of speech. So if people take offense to a joke, so what? You took offense. They're not going to get you arrested, and neither should they do. And this is saying about, like, it goes back to your previous question. One person's truth is different from another person's truth, but one person's sense of humor is also different from another person's sense of humor. And when your job is a comedy writer, the last thing, like, why are the police even taking it seriously to go and to such extremes and cost so much money to do that as well, to arrest somebody just over a tweet? And then, we've had people in prison for a couple of years for tweets that they didn't
Yeah.
actually mean as offense. It's just literally, this is how I feel. I'm just going to put it out there. So yeah, mudslinging has been something massive at the moment, at least like UK side, for comedians and comics to have to deal with. And it's been quite extreme. And I think it's a real tough arena for you at the moment. And any comedian that goes out there and still loves their job and still tells jokes and still enjoys themselves in front of an audience is doing the world a massive favor by still keeping comedy alive. We need laughter, What have we got if we haven't got laughter? That's what I think.
I agree with that. All right, you ready to enter the multiverse?
Yay.
All right, now the doors have opened onto the infinite plane of the fourth dimension. So, board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. If comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
All right. Well, I personally think comics are the colorists, okay, shading in a scene, and I think comedians are the orchestras of rhythm. Does that, yeah. So, I mean, this comes from being backstage in Panto as well, like, and being on screen and in children's books. Uh, Everything plays to a performance. It's all performance, it's all connection, but definitely comedians are orchestrators of rhythm.
I'll go with that one. All right. So, here on the Comedians in Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
right? So the previous guest was Sawyer Smith. And his question for you, Diddy, is if you could change one thing about the world, what would it be?
That's a big question. Okay, I'm gonna because it's such a hot topic at the minute, censorship. I would literally like everybody everywhere, we need freedom of speech. We need freedom of speech. You know, censorship is killing so many things, like to me, humor is holy, and I grew up with like comedy shows that I loved. Like there was a series of films called the Carry On films, and they were rude and they pushed over the edge and they took the mickey out of human behavior. And they were brilliant. They were so funny. And again, if anybody like wants to know what they were, you could probably find those on YouTube. But Carry On films, okay? And like so bring back freedom of speech. Let comedy be allowed to be comedy again. Like pantos are surreal, things really. You got blokes dressing up as women in panto dames and singing songs, and there are slop scenes with shaving foam cream pies that get thrown in people's faces and stuff, and it's just fun. It's just fun. There's no offense to be taken there. People need to lighten up. Not everything is so serious, do you know what I mean? And if you can't, as I say about humor is holy, it is what keeps us human. It keeps us kind. And in a world kind of trying to censor laughter, we need more comedians, we need more comics, and we need the joy of comedy even more than we did before. And we need like politicians to loosen up, man. You know, stop putting these ridiculous like laws in place to censor comedy. Do you want everybody to be angry? I think that's what I would do. Freedom of speech, stop censorship, stop making people angry, let people be happy. Because with people being happy, you have a harmonious world. People unhappy, you're not going to have a harmonious world. So,
I agree. That's why we got to get the plastic out of the environment. So, last question, legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Type 5 survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
I think the comedian's voice echoes like Only Fools and Horses, Steptoe Son, like Rising Damp. Suit You, Sir. If I said Suit You, Sir, do you know where that comes from?
No, I don't.
Okay, so that's a fast show. Okay, so Johnny Depp did a scene like years ago with his British comedy called The Fast Show, and there's a scene called like Suit You, Sir, and that
Mhm.
that phrase stuck. And that's comedy. That's not comic. That's comedy.
Mhm.
It has a comic element to it. So, I like Father Ted was brilliant. Go and watch Father Ted. And I think you'll understand why I think that comedians' cultural voice echoes more than comics. I think sometimes comics can be forgotten, where comedy isn't. So, like the Mighty Boosh in space. So, like Simon Pegg, who's been in Mission Impossible, he used to
Mhm.
be very like he used to write comedy, and he was a stand-up comedian, and that's how he started as a stand-up comedian. And now look at him, he's doing like Mission Impossible, internationally famous. He wrote a series called Spaced, and it was just about a couple of people who shared a flat together, and they just got stoned, and it was brilliant. It was so well written, and look where he is now. So it became a cult influence, like Shaun of the Dead. Who would think that you could make a funny comedy about zombies? Do you
Right.
know?
Yep.
So I'm proud that like I brushed like shoulders with these people, because I think comedy is mixing joy and truth, and I think that's immortality, and I think comedians' voices echo.
All right. So, where can everybody find you online, Diddy?
Right, okay, well, if you're interested, I'm at diddyweldon.co.uk. So it's DIDDYWHELDON.co.uk. And there are my artwork, my kids' books. I've been writing some kids' books, which are kind of light-hearted and metaphysical, really. I've got a doctorate in divinity and a master's in metaphysical sciences. And there's some music on there, mainly my AI stuff, which I know lots of people don't like, which is really actually quite funny. This resistance to AI is just a tool, yeah. And what else is on there? Oh yeah, so some of my videos on there, and then there's like some access to my films and some of my films and stuff. So yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, Diddy, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Thank you very much. Namaste.